I mean, Trump is obviously flailing now. I mean, he's struggling. His campaign was built for the first sort of 6 months on I'm the kind of the candidate that's more mentally with it. And now you have someone who's 59, much younger, much healthier, much fitter, and they're really struggling.
Donald Trump is quite busy campaigning for the presidency. He's got that big debate against Kamala Harris on Tuesday evening. I'm sure lots of rehearsals, preparations currently frantically underway. Well, Donald Trump's lawyers are fighting to try and overturn a verdict finding him liable for sexual abuse and slander. Do you remember the case of the writer Carroll? Well, she says the Republican attacked her in a department store dressing room in 1996. Well, that jury awarded her $5 million. This is the latest legal battle in a string of charges being put against the Republican nominee for president. Yesterday, Donald Trump pleaded not guilty to revised federal charges against him over his alleged attempts to interfere in the 2020 presidential election. I know it's a lot to kind of pull together in your mind all at once. Here to help us, Josie Ensor is the US correspondent at The Times and joins me now. Josie, remind us of the background of this specific legal case. It's one, clearly Donald Trump, his lawyers are keen to try and overturn if they can.
Yeah, so this one is actually in many ways the most personally damaging for Trump. I mean, you have another case involving a sexual assault, and it talks to his character. But he's found that far easier to write off as Stormy Daniels was an adult film star, and here is Jean Carroll, who's a columnist, a writer, and her credibility throughout this. She's never changed her story, and so I think for him, he's found this the one that sort of dogged him the most. I mean, you have the Georgia election interference case, you have the presidential immunity, and all of this sort of speaks to what he likes to call a witch hunt against him by the Democrats. But this is a very personal one, and so he's due any minute to appear in court himself, which is quite rare because he didn't appear during the civil trial. So it obviously shows how seriously he's taking this.
Would that be his choice to turn up?
Sorry?
Would that be his choice to turn up?
Yes. I mean, he in civil cases he's not obliged to turn up. So this is purely his decision, which shows you how seriously he's taking this.
It leans into that narrative that it's the predator versus the prosecutor in this election.
Yes, I mean that's something that Kamala Harris has definitely tried to lean into, and she sort of says, in many ways, I'm the law enforcement character. I'm the candidate for you, and here is someone who doesn't respect women, someone who doesn't respect the law, and it's created a very stark sort of two-way image in the election.
And quite a strong campaigning platform for Kamala Harris. I'm looking inside the World section of The Times today and reporting here that Kamala Harris is leading in 4 of 7 swing states. We know so much scrutiny on those states. Why do you think that is? Why has she managed to capture this sort of momentum?
I think the country has been leaning Democrat for some time, but then you had a candidate that was just so unable to kind of even conduct himself on television, on interviews, and so a lot of Democrats just felt like these were two aging candidates that didn't represent them, and some people had to really kind of swallow their tongue and think about voting for Biden. And obviously, there's all the huge number of undecided voters as well who were very angry at the Biden administration's policies towards Israel and Gaza, and so they kind of lost quite a number of people, hundreds of thousands of potential voters in these swing states, in Michigan in particular, where they have a lot of Arab Americans. And I think with Kamala Harris, obviously you have this hugely energizing factor that we probably haven't seen since Obama the first time round, and maybe since then Bernie Sanders perhaps, in kind of picking up this sort of viral meme content that's happening. But I mean, Trump is obviously flailing now. I mean, he's struggling. His campaign was built for the first sort of 6 months on I'm the kind of the candidate that's more mentally with it, and now you have someone who's 59, much younger, much healthier, much fitter, and they're really struggling, I think, to get any attacks to land.
They have, haven't they? And that's where the Democrats calling the Republicans weird has actually proved to be quite successful. I wonder, ahead of that debate, it's going to be the first time that Kamala Harris comes face to face with Donald Trump in that debate. Who's got the more risky job there?
I think both in different ways. I mean, Kamala Harris, sort of part of the appeal so far has just been that she's kind of following in Biden's footsteps and not actually doing much media. I mean, she was criticized for doing a 17-minute interview with CNN the other day. And so it kind of allows a lot of people to project onto her things that she hasn't actually laid out yet. So people who are worried about the economy, because she has only just begun to lay out her platform on that, it's allowed them to kind of project onto her what they think, and particularly with Gaza and Israel as well. I think the undecided voters are clinging to this hope that maybe she's a different candidate to Biden when really she hasn't actually spelt that out. So I think this might be the first time that she's really put on the spot to actually answer a lot of these questions, which might, it could go either way for her. It could turn off the people who thought, oh, well, actually, do you know what? I thought she was going to differentiate herself from Biden on this, and she's not. Trump has more to lose in the sense that it's more of a kind of a stark division between them now than it was with Biden. I mean, people were just so shocked by Biden's performance the last time around that was a takeaway for most people. But Kamala's going to have to be fighting on her own now.
Oh, it was terrible. I mean, I almost sort of sat there. We covered it live here on Times Radio, and we'll do the same next Tuesday evening. I sat there trying to sort of will Joe Biden along. I've got no skin in this game here, but I suddenly, like he was my granddad or something. And then I just took a step back and thought, what? I mean, what do we know about the timing of when that first debate was called? Is there any sense at all that the Democrats wanted it as early as possible to try and engineer what's happened? I mean, the reversal in their fortunes ever since Joe Biden's been sort of shown the back door has just been incredible.
Yeah, I mean, for the Democrats that were not necessarily his inner circle, but the Democrats in the wider field, you know, the Nancy Pelosi's, I think they were very keen to get it as early as possible, because I mean, many people didn't think it would even be possible to field another candidate this late in the game, particularly after all the primaries. So I mean, she's already running the shortest presidential campaign in recent history, so she doesn't have much of a run up, and she's it remains to be seen whether that's actually a boon for her. I mean, many people say, do you know what, it doesn't give people a lot of time to kind of let it sink in that this is the candidate. But then a lot of other people I've been talking to said even the last few weeks she's been seeming quite presidential. And I think this debate on Tuesday will give her another chance to do just that, really.
Because as a vice president, she was not hugely popular.
I mean, there was also speculation, even within the administration and even within the Biden team, that they were kind of both giving her very unpopular platforms like the border. And she got very unstuck, I think, at times. I mean, there was famously some trips in Central and South America where she just it just did not go well for her. And there was some speculation that the Biden team was actually almost deliberately doing that to kind of set up this contrast between them, and kind of set the way for him, even though he'd be well into his 80s for the next election, to be the candidate for the next election. So I think really Kamala is getting much more favorable press coverage now than she ever was in her first 3 years as vice president.
Yeah, it's something that Republicans feel quite angry about. Actually, they've talked quite a lot about the bias that they perceive in the US press particularly. Josie, thank you. Josie Ensor, US correspondent at The Times.